So this is a video about structuring your ideas into a full piece. So by now you should have lots of ideas kind of developed, and the next thing to do is to be able to take an idea and structure it into a full piece. And this is often done in a much more structured way than you might think sometimes. So for a start, if you come to the website for the course, which is sites.google.com/view/UAL music, up till there will, if you stop the video, bring you into the website. Then if you go to Project 2, Composition and Production, and this is just the kind of, sort of starter page for it basically. But if you scroll to structuring an idea into a full piece, then this is what I'm going to look at, and there's some things for you to go away and look at as well during this session. And I'll give you a quick little demo of how to do this in Logic 2. So firstly, one of the things that you might have noticed from the Sway is that you have been asked to research your target audience, particularly when you come to evaluate things and thinking like, is your product, because music ultimately these days is a product really most of the time. Does it kind of fit for like a target audience? Like, who do you think is out there to listen to your music? And this is a hurdle to kind of get over when you're making music. Like, actually think, you either need people to consume it by streaming it or buying it or, loving it enough to come and see you live and things like that. And it is a product. So you can think of it in similar terms. So thinking like, if you're going to expand on your 70s piece, maybe, for instance, what kind of audiences there out there for that? And we talked in previous years about like 80s, there's been a huge resurgence in kind of retro 80s fashion styles and also obviously music as well. And you can see that in the Stranger Things theme tune. So, what kind of modern day audiences are actually out there for the kind of music that you are about to make? And then like research the length of the tracks, for instance. If you're going to make a prog rock tune, then, you should be aiming well over 5-6 minutes towards 10. If you want to make an epic, maybe more like 30 to 40 minutes, something like that. And the typical structures employed. So, if you are going to make a kind of pop song, then, 3 minutes or under is what most pop songs are kind of aimed at because of the way they get played on radio. And the same kind of principles apply to streaming. I'd say even more so with streaming though, like you've got to hook people in the first like few seconds, like the first 3 seconds, people have got to like be impressed and kind of know where you're going with it. And like research the kind of structures that they use. Yeah, you don't have to kind of use a standard thing. You can research something and say, actually, this is what I want to use, and I use this because it's from this song or this piece of music. And think about like how you phrase things. So we talked about question and answer when we looked at the blues, how like question rises and answer falls. And there are other structures like AABA, which we'll cover later on. Where's the climatic point in the song? So this is often about 2/3 of the way through is what you're looking for. The kind of double chorus or the middle eight, that kind of moment. Having that in a song is really important. And how do you kind of build and release tension to kind of get to there? And this is kind of what verses and choruses almost do in a way. And like one often will build tension and the other one then releases it. Do you have a hook, and how often is it kind of used in this kind of music? What is the typical instrumentation, typical texture? And texture is a difficult word to think about, but with texture, think about it, it's like, how are the instruments being used? Like, is an instrument playing block chords or are they playing arpeggios? Like, how are they actually being used? And then you can also use like the texture of the whole thing, which is like how all those things are coming together and being used together. And the dynamic shape of a kind of track, like what do they tend to do basically? And use this kind of stuff, use this information. So go research the music in the style that you're working in and try and figure this stuff out. You might already know this stuff from your research, so that you can base your ideas on it. When it comes to your evaluation, then you can talk about this. So the next thing I want you to do is actually to go and research and go and watch a video which is called Why We Love Repetition in Music. And if you put TED Talks, if you go search for this on YouTube, or you can just come to this page obviously and just play it from within here, I want you to just actually maybe like pause this video now And just go and watch this, and it's about the psychology of your brain and how it likes repetition, basically. So go and watch that. So hopefully you pause the video, or you just are about to, and you've watched it. It's really short, but it's really powerful video, I think, about actually humans like repetition. So when you write songs, include a lot of it, because then you'll make your songs memorable. So the next thing to think about really is like the dynamic shape of your song. And, you often find that your choruses are lower than your verses are lower than your choruses when you write songs, and you might have bridges to kind of build up and things like that. What's quite interesting about this is if you know anything about mixing and mastering, sometimes mastering engineers actually do push the volume a little bit more in the choruses than the rest of the track, so it kind of lifts them up out of the mix. And they do it not enough that you would really notice it. You're not supposed to sit there and go, oh, I just noticed he's turned up the volume there. It's not done like that. It's done so subtly you don't really notice it, but you do notice it a tiny bit, maybe at a subconscious level, that the chorus is just brighter and bigger. So think about how, by shaping your track, with kind of verses, choruses, and things like that, you are actually shaping the dynamic of your track. So you do want peaks and troughs. The best way to sound loud is to put it right next to something quiet. So how do you differentiate? Now, this is one of the main bits, really, of the session that I want you to think about, is how do you differentiate between sections of a song? So, what makes the verse different to a chorus? So you could start thinking about changing different musical elements, basically. So like the time signature you could change the rhythmic style from just straight to swing, or straight to dotted, or simple to using triplets like duple to triplet time. You could change the key or tonality. So if it's a really common thing, for instance, like Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd, kind of does this thing where the verses are minor and it switches to its relative major in the choruses. That's a really common thing in pop songs as well. So the melodic shape as well, you could actually change the melodic shape or direction. If your melody goes up, maybe have it go down. Chord types, so you start using some different actually types of chords. Maybe use mainly, really good example of this is classic rock. A lot of songs like Pour Some Sugar on Me by Def Leppard, and Sweet Home Alabama, Sweet Child of Mine, they use like 1, 4, and 5, so major chords in their choruses, and then they all pretty much, I think, go to like a, maybe not Sweet Home Alabama, but the other two examples go to a chord 2 in their verses, which is a minor chord. So it's like they're kind of like only playing majors in the choruses, so it's quite bright, and then they introduce a minor chord in their verses as a bit of diversity, really. So the speed of chord change is a really popular thing to change. Yeah, so like if a chord's only changed every 2 bars, maybe have it change every bar or less. Texture, we talked about that a second ago, how you actually use your instruments, and just simple things like just drop the drums out, particularly when you're rehearsing, just drop them out for a few seconds and then bring them back in. It's really powerful. Where the melody is played, so like, the melody is usually on the top, but why can't it be in the kind of middle of the band? Why can't it be actually played on the bass for a little while and stuff like that? Changing instrumentation, but often this will affect your consistency, because generally, like most of the type of music you're working on is to be played by like a band or something like that. So it'd be odd to change section and just change the instrumentation, but you might change the instrumentation on who's playing the melody, maybe. And tempo, and there are lots more elements that you could think of, but basically there's some ones to start with. Now the question was, how do you differentiate between sections and still maintain consistency? Because you want the audience to realize you've changed section from a verse to a chorus, but you don't want them to think it's a brand new song, unless you're doing prog rock. Then you might. But anyway, so what you want to do is, for instance, imagine if you changed all these elements, then it's just going to sound like a brand new song. It's not going to sound like a new section. It's going to sound like a completely different song. So what you want to do is choose maybe like 2 or 3 and just change those. right? And then kind of rework the other features around that. Yeah, but just focus on thinking and actually actively think to yourself, you've got a great bit of music, think, I'm going to change the chord progression and the rhythmic style. That's it. Yeah, that will be enough to make it sound like a different section, but not too much that it sounds like a brand new song when you come to do it, because you can have similar sort of drum beats, similar melodic shapes, stuff like that. It's just a few things have changed. So we'll have a look at implementing this in a minute. But if you wanted to extend your kind of learning, this is going a bit further. So there's another structure, or a really popular structure called AABA, which is known as the American Songbook and Jazz Standards structure. If you're into jazz, you want to have a look into this. And just to give you an idea how structured some songs can be, right? So the idea of AABA is you basically have an idea, you do it once. So maybe that's an 8-bar idea and we call it A. Then you do it again because it's AA, so we do it again. Often there's a small change, but not a big one, but a little change maybe at the end. And then you have B, which is a contrasting idea. So different chords, rhythm, melodic shape. Some musical elements like we were just talking about have been changed, right? And then you get A again, but the idea is often it has a different ending. So there are loads of examples of this. Take the A Train is a really beautiful jazz standard and kind of does this. So you can go and listen to it here on the website, and I've marked out the structure for you there. But if you actually look at this here, so you've got A marked up here, and if we look through, you've got 8 bars, so that takes us to here. So if you actually look at the melody, you've got like a long G, and then this kind of E, G, C, E, G sharp. And if we look like starting 8 bars later down here, it's exactly the same. Yeah, so this melody here, G, E, G, C, E, G sharp, is the same. And actually this next line I'm pretty sure actually is the same as well. The difference, because these first 8 bars up here, the first 2 systems, are the A section. And you see up here I said often with a small change. And what you'll note is that when you do it the next time, the melody is the same. But the chords here, right at the end, change. So this is a C7, whereas this is a D minor 7 to a G7. And it's in brackets because it's kind of optional. But it goes 2, 5 and brings you back round to the beginning of A to start A again here. And then when you get to the end of A the second time here, this chord, if you're thinking, the hell's that there for, John? Then that's a dominant chord, and it's chord 5 of a key of F. And if we look what the key starts at for the B section, oh, it's F. Yeah, so it's just a simple dominant chord preparing you to go to the key of F, basically. And then do you see like the chord speed has changed? Up here they were doing 2 chords, a chord for every 2 bars, right, on the first line. Now we've got a chord for 4 bars. So for a start, the keys change because we've gone to F, and also the chords are taking, or this chord is taking like twice the amount of time that we would get them up there for, basically. And even down here, we go chord for a bar, chord for a bar, chord for a bar. Here we've got chord for 2 bars, actually, and then it's kind of going to the D minor, and we're getting a nice kind of D minor to G back to take us back to A again, basically. This is what these chords are really doing for us, is taking us back to C. So here's like an example. You can go and look at many, many more jazz examples of kind of A again, slight difference, B, and then if you go listen to it, you'll get A again, basically. So that's an example. You also get this structure used in pop music, so you can go and have a look at kind of pop songs and stuff like that, and see if you can recognize this kind of AABA structure. It's a great way to write a melody, right? So do the melody once, do it again, do a different line, and then come back to that original line maybe with a different ending. Brilliant way of writing a memorable melody. So what I wanted to focus on is, so how do you actually like structure something out in Logic and also think about this stuff? So I've got an example here. I just play my A section, based on Jamiroquai, well, influenced by. Okay, so that's the A section. And it's got this kind of funky bass part, it's very 80s inspired. And, got the kind of octave thing going on with the flat 7, but it's kind of funky. It's got some funky syncopated grooves and stuff. And what I thought when I wrote this is my next section, I actually wanted to switch to a very straight bass. And that part was jumping around the chords. So now we're just going a descending chromatic line and straight rhythms, basically. So that's one change. The other change is the harmonic speed is still the same because we got a different chord basically every bar, and we will have that in the B section. But the original just goes to D minor 7 to G7, the chords from Any Colour You Like, Pink Floyd, or Uptown Funk, Bruno Mars, right? Really common chords. So we've got this, it's just repeated every time, right? D minor to G7, basically. Then here we get like loads of different chords, basically. So we go to really, really different kind of sounding chords and things like that. So the first one starts at like A minor 7. So we've gone somewhere else and we get some really interesting chords at some point. So we change the chords up so that they kind of go somewhere. And I think just having two chords, just D minor G, D minor G, D minor G, kind of gets your subconscious a little bit annoyed. Yeah, and that builds tension because you're like, I'm just hearing the same two chords all the time. So this acts as like a bit of a release to that, like we were talking about earlier. So you should hear that in a minute. And what I really like is you can see the melodic shape of this. It's like quick little thing, long note, quick little thing, long note, quick little thing, long note, right? And then this is kind of different, really. Like the long, there aren't really long notes. It just ends on a like ascending kind of scale idea, whereas this is kind of coming down at the end. This is kind of going up. So it's very different melodic shape, basically. This kind of, if anything, this kind of goes up and down, whereas this kind of does start down, but kind of goes up and then down up. So it has a different shape to it. And that's it, really. So I wanted to change the bass part is the biggest change, and then open out the chords to play some different chords because we just play two over and over, and change the melodic shape. So I'll play it for you and you can see what it sounds like. So once you've done this and you've got kind of your two sections, basically, of your piece of music, you might want to make three. But I tend to try and, rather than structure out the song yet, like actually come up with the sections, what they're going to be. You might have your own way of doing things, but I just like this. So actually what I'm going to do is move this there. And I've also created, just open this up, kind of markers. I like using markers. So I can move the markers around too. Maybe I want to repeat this A section, so I'm going to repeat that. And if it says this, it's just I've put automation on, which we've not covered yet, but I'm going to copy. And I'm going to move this there for a start, because now we've got AABA, if you remember from our session earlier. So AABA. But actually, one of the things that I noted, let's just move this in. Maybe I'm going to repeat the B section, right? So I grab that and I can just move the whole thing. So I'm selecting all of the regions in that section, dragging a box over them. I'm just moving them holding Alt or Option, like we've been doing all term, to do a quick copy. And one of the things that I noted when I did this last year is actually the join from the B section to the A section coming back doesn't work very well. So I could change the chords around and stuff like that and the melody to make it work nicely, or you could be lazy, leave a gap and just stick in some drums. So I could go through and like find a nice beat that I like, put the fills up like loads, and then basically going to get like a kind of drum fill stitching the thing together. And I might come up with like a little bass idea or something, musical to kind of like link the two things, have it as a little kind of linking bit and stuff. And then you can start coming up with like intros, outros, middle eights and stuff like that. But you can see how, just as a snapshot, we can just kind of drag a box over a whole section that you've come up with and just move it holding Alt, and you can copy it. And then you can start to build up your structure. And then I've shown you using markers before, and I would, just get into the habit of marking stuff out basically. So we've kind of got that going on at the minute. And then when I close it up, I can see the A section, the B section, the A section. It's all very clear, and it makes a lot of things easier at a later date. So that's a quick overview of like how you could go about structuring your musical idea. I would come to this web page that you can find by going to the website, then Project 2, then structuring an idea into a full piece. And basically what you need to do is take one of your ideas that you've developed so far for one of the decades, develop that into a whole piece, like an actual song basically, with melody, with chords, with rhythm, with bass parts. So it's a full song. And even if you're thinking, it'd be a song with like lyrics and stuff, then if we've got time, we could try and get you into a studio to record you. But actually, for a start, just get the melody down on like a flute or something like that, just to represent the melody and what it would kind of do. It doesn't have to be exactly what you're kind of picturing in your head, but a rough approximation of it would be great. So yeah, basically take an idea, structure it out to a whole track that has bass, chords, rhythm, melody, the whole kind of thing going on really, and uses a defined structure. So like something you found in that style. So if you're doing like funk, you might find that they get like breakdown sections, long introductions, things like that. If you're doing like a pop song, it's probably going to be like very short intro, if any, verse, chorus, end maybe, something like that. It might even start with the chorus because of the whole radio streaming thing, like literally giving the audience the chorus straight away. So they're like, oh, I like this, I might listen to the rest of the song. So yeah, basically like think about using a defined structure, because when you evaluate your piece, you've got to think about these things, like where did you get your structure from and how did that work, and explaining your kind of structure. So go through all the stuff on this webpage, watch this video, it's really good. And you can have a look at the AABA stuff if you're kind of into jazz. It's really, really powerful. It's behind so many jazz standards, that kind of thing. And take an idea you already have, choose maybe 2 or 3 of these things on this list, change those, but try and keep everything else fairly consistent so that it sounds like a new section, but the same song or same piece of music, then structure it out into a structure you've researched.